The whole world was shocked when Princess Diana suddenly died. At the time, the police stated it was a terrible accident caused by a high-speed chase while Diana's driver tried to get away from the paparazzi. But not everyone believed that story. People have had doubts for years about whether there was more to it. This led to a lot of rumors and ideas about what really happened. Now, after more than 20 years, people who were close to Diana are finally starting to speak up. Shocking new information has come out after people like Princess Anne and Diana's close friend Elton John started to open up. Everyone is shocked by this news, and it has renewed interest in the controversial ideas about how Diana really died. Right from the start, Diana's death was strange. The accident took place on August 31, 1997, in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. In the hours after the tragedy, both the French and British governments quickly said it was an accident, but people still have questions. His story is that Princess Diana's driver, Henry Paul, got drunk and lost control of the car while trying to get away from the cameras. But from the beginning, a lot of people close to Diana, and even people who weren't involved with the case, thought something wasn't right. Diana herself had been scared about her safety in the years before she died. She even wrote her maid, Paul Burrell, a letter in which she said she was afraid for her life and thought someone was planning an accident in her car. The royal family didn't say anything about the many conspiracy ideas that were going around about her death for years. They stuck with the official investigations. People were suspicious because the royal family usually stays out of scandals, but their quiet made them look even more suspicious. Diana was in the history of the royal family one of the most talked about people. Her marriage to Prince Charles was full of problems, like cheating, constant media attention, and finally splitting up. Diana was both a blessing and a problem for the royal family because she was not part of the royal family and was very popular with the people. These difficult situations made people think that her death wasn't just a sad accident. The long-held story has been turned on its head by Princess Anne's latest admission. The ideas about Diana's death are given new life by what she said. Anne's words have a lot of weight because she is a senior part of the royal family and is known for being loyal and private. Unlike her brothers and nephews, she has stayed out of the public eye for a long time. This makes what she says even more powerful. There has been a lot of talk about whether or not the royal family had anything to do with Diana's death since Princess Anne spoke out about it more than 20 years after the fact. Anne didn't directly blame Queen Elizabeth or anyone else in the royal family, but what she said made it sound like Diana's death wasn't just a sad accident, as was previously thought. Many people have changed their minds about what they thought they knew about that terrible night after Anne's statement. Her words have given new life to the idea that some people in the royal family may have wanted Diana to stay out of the public eye forever. There are huge effects from this. There are a lot of traditions, secrets, and myths surrounding the British royal family that go back many years. They've always been very careful about how they look in public, keeping their private problems out of sight. It is very important to keep things stable at all costs, so any hint of trouble is quickly shut down. If it were ever proven that the royal family had anything to do with Diana's death, even if it was only a small part, it would totally destroy the monarchy. You would almost have to be crazy to think that Queen Elizabeth or other top royals could have been involved in something so horrible. The people and the media now have to deal with this uncomfortable possibility because Anne said it. Another thing that this new information shows is how Diana got along with the royal family before she died. It's no secret that things were tense after she broke up with Prince Charles. Some people saw Diana's activities as a threat to the monarchy's honor and stability, whether they were her tell-all interviews or her public relationships. Diana had gone from being a wife who had been cheated on into an international icon that millions of people love. Her work to help others and genuine connection with regular people made her so famous that she even made other members of the royal family look bad. People in the royal establishment who wanted to protect the monarchy's image may not have liked how well known she was becoming. One of the most interesting things about the story is how close she is to her boys, Prince William and Prince Harry. Both princes were deeply saddened and angry about her death, which they have talked about publicly over the years. Now that their aunt, Princess Anne, has admitted what she did, the pain is back. It's one thing to lose a mother in a terrible accident, but it must be especially heartbreaking to think that her death may have been planned by the organization they now work for. The royal family has put William and Harry in a very tough spot because they love their late mother and feel obligated to serve the crown. They are now in a tough spot because of the shocking news, which could change their roles in the kingdom. For the people, Anne's admission confirms what they have thought for a long time. Diana's death has been the subject of conspiracy theories for years, driven by strange facts like the fact that emergency services were slow to arrive and claims that MI6 was watching her. These ideas have stuck around in part because the royal family doesn't like to talk about their private lives, which makes people even more suspicious. These theories have been brought up again by Anne's statement, which has led to new calls for an independent probe into Diana's death. If it were ever proven that the royal family or other powerful groups were involved, it would support what many people have thought all along. Diana was silenced as part of a bigger conspiracy. This new development in the Diana story also makes us think deeply about how the media affects how people think about the royal family. The constant media attention that followed Diana around everywhere was a big part of what happened that led to her death. For years, the paparazzi were seen as the bad guys in the story because they were blamed for the deadly crash. But if there was a bigger plot going on, the media might have been used as an easy target to keep people from focusing on the darker forces that might have really killed Diana. As people around the world try to understand what Princess Anne's admission means, we can't help but think about the future of the British royalty. There have been many scams involving the royal family, but this one is very different. There is no other scandal like the idea that the crown may have had something to do with the death of one of its most beloved figures. It could seriously hurt people's trust in the government. Some recent events, like Prince Andrew's legal problems and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's decision to step down from their royal tasks, have already made people less trusting. The discussion about the monarchy's place in the modern world is made more difficult by Anne's confession. Many people see the royal family as a symbol of British history and custom, but some people think it's out of date in a world that values openness and responsibility more and more. If it is ever proven that the royal family had anything to do with Diana's death, it could change the way people feel about the government and lead to calls for reform or even getting rid of it completely. The world is holding its breath while they wait for more information about Princess Anne's shocking confession. It is still unclear what will happen next. One thing is for sure, though. What she said has already cast a dark shadow over the royal family and its future. Anne used to be seen as a stable, dependable, and non-controversial family member. Now, she is at the center of one of the biggest royal scandals in recent history. It's possible that she broke her quiet because she wanted to finally clear things up, but now there are a lot of questions that won't be easy to answer. The most interesting thing about Anne's admission is that it goes against a long-standing royal practice of keeping quiet and keeping things private. For hundreds of years, the royal family has built an image of being mysterious and strong by keeping secrets and ignoring problems, often with the help of the media. In the past, the palace has always taken a strict no-comment position on sensitive issues. After years of keeping quiet, Anne seems to be motivated by something deeper than breaking this code of silence, especially when it comes to such a big problem as Diana's death. The things she said go against what people usually think royal people should do. Many people have their own ideas about when Anne's statement happened. Why now, after a few years of peace and quiet? Some people think it might be because of a number of things, including the normal aging of important people involved in Diana's life and death, a desire to clear the air for future generations, or changes in the way the family works since the death of Queen Elizabeth. Without a doubt, Anne's choice to speak out has caused a huge problem that the royal family will not be able to hide like they did with other issues. No matter why Princess Anne finally spoke out, it started a new, unknown part in the history of the royal family that won't be easily forgotten or contained. Now the important question is, what did Anne mean when she said inside job? Even though her words weren't very clear, they were enough to spark a lot of conspiracy ideas that had been talked about in the background for a long time, but had never really gone away. One of the most popular theories is that Diana was seen as a threat to the carefully created image of the royal family. After she got divorced from Prince Charles, Diana wasn't limited in what she could do or say in public like she had been before. In fact, her life after she was a princess seemed to make her even more important. People all over the world admired her for going to war zones, helping AIDS patients, and her friendship with Dodi Fayed, which got a lot of attention from the media. Diana had become more famous than the organization she used to be a part of. She was now a real celebrity in her own right, and the rules of royal life couldn't control or manage her. The royal family depends on keeping an air of mystery around them and staying out of the way of modern celebrity society. Diana, on the other hand, was all for the media and used it to her advantage, winning over millions of hearts in the process. Her talks with no filters and constant media attention were shaking up the royal family's carefully guarded image. Diana already took off the mask in her famous 1995 interview with Martin Bashir, where she talked about some of the deeply personal problems she had with the royal family. It became famous for her to talk about how crowded her marriage to Charles was, referring to his long-term affair with Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana was honest all the time, which made her popular with the people and a problem for the royal family. Diana was heading for a fight with the very organization she used to work for because she was becoming more famous and ready to talk about her private problems. The royal family's ability to keep control of its story in the face of such a strong and uncertain force was seriously called into question by what she did. That talk changed everything because it let the public see behind the royal palace curtains in a way that had never been done before. People's views on Diana and the family changed a lot because of how raw and emotional it was. Based on what Princess Anne recently said, it looks like the royal family wasn't happy with Diana's public role and wasn't just uncomfortable with it. Could there have been talks within the group about how to stop the danger she posed? If that's the case, who was there? Queen Elizabeth probably wasn't personally involved, but it's now impossible to rule out the idea that other senior royals or royal advisors, especially those who were determined to protect the institution at all costs, may have been. Anne's news also makes us rethink the role of outside groups, especially British intelligence services like MI5 and MI6. There have been rumors for years that Diana was being watched in the months before she died, especially because she was seeing an Egyptian Muslim man named Dodi Fayed. There are some theories that some people in the British elite didn't like the idea of Diana marrying a non-Christian and possibly having children with him. Some theories go even further and say that strong groups in the government and intelligence community may have worked together to stop Diana from doing anything that would make the monarchy look bad. Since Anne's admission, more attention has been paid to these ideas. Unsettling questions about who was involved and what could have been done to control Diana's growing power are harder to ignore. Official investigations into Diana's death, including the inquest that followed, found no evidence of MI6 involvement. However, a lot of people still think the investigations were not full. Key witnesses gave contradictory statements, important questions were not answered, and it looked like proof was either tampered with or missed. For example, the strange white Fiat Uno that was seen near the crash site and the claims that the driver, Henri Paul, had ties to intelligence services were never fully explained. The public is now paying more attention because of Anne's recent words, which have made them wonder if these factors may have had a bigger impact on the tragedy than they first thought. But Anne's admission doesn't just make people question the British system. It also shows how Diana's death affected people all over the world. Diana became famous around the world in the years before she died. She used her fame to support causes that went beyond national lines. For example, her work to ban landmines caused a lot of trouble and put her at odds with countries and businesses that made money off of these weapons. People saw her charity work, especially with AIDS patients and underprivileged groups, as progressive and even political in ways that other royals had avoided. Diana was known all over the world, which made her famous and also made people hate her. The idea that her impact went far beyond the UK suggests that her death may have had political effects around the world. There are rumors that her support, especially in areas with a lot of violence, may have angered powerful groups outside of the British monarchy. Because of this, some people are wondering if foreign governments or big companies may have had something to do with her death. Princess Anne's admission doesn't prove any theory for sure, but it does make us think again about how Diana's life and death affected people around the world. As more information comes to light, the question of who is responsible grows more important. If there really was a plan to kill Diana, whether it was by the royal family, intelligence services, or other powerful groups, who should be held accountable? And how can justice be done now, more than 20 years later? This issue isn't just about finding the truth. It's also about making peace between Diana's memory and the group she used to be a part of. It's more important than ever to do a fuller study into how Diana died after hearing what Anne said. People in the public eye, the media, and even some leaders are now calling for openness and wanting answers to long-standing questions about what happened that terrible night in Paris. That search for justice is not just a legal problem for Diana's family, especially her two sons, William and Harry. It is also a very personal one. Both of them have been very open about how much their mother's death has changed their lives. Harry has spoken out about how the media and the way the royal family has handled the situation has made him feel. People say that his choice to take a break from royal tasks with his wife Meghan Markle was partly in response to the attention and pressure Diana had to deal with. Anne's statement, which seems to confirm what people have been thinking for a long time, could make things even worse between the two brothers and the monarchy. Also, they might think again about their roles in the royal family and how they want to remember their mother's memory in the future. The story of this drama is built around Diana's memory. For many people around the world, she was the people's princess, a queen who broke the rules by being honest about her feelings in public. People loved her because she did good deeds, fought for underrepresented groups, and was able to connect with people from all walks of life. But Princess Anne's admission suggests that Diana may have been a target in an establishment that values secrecy and control because she was open and well-known. If Diana's death really was the result of an inside job planned by people who were afraid of her power, her legacy becomes even more important. In today's world, it makes you think about what it means to be a royal and what happens when the organization itself becomes a threat to one of its own. These questions have been around for a long time, but they're more important and sharp now because of Anne's recent news. People have thought for a long time that the royalty, with its strict rules and power struggles, had a hard time understanding or controlling someone like Diana. Anne's statement has made it more likely that Diana wasn't just misunderstood, but was also actively put down and kept quiet. What Princess Anne said has a deep and far-reaching effect. What people think about the government, how it works, and how far it might go to protect itself. As everyone deals with these new facts, one thing is clear. This story is far from over. In fact, this might be the beginning of a new part of the story of Princess Diana, the royal family, and the search for the truth. One of the main questions right now is how big of a cover-up there is. Who were the main people involved if Diana's death really was the result of a planned inside job? Was it the work of a small group of important people in the monarchy? Or did the British government, intelligence services, and maybe even people around the world take part? These questions lead to a lot of guesswork about how big such a plot could have been and whether it involved hiding information and changing how people see things. People have thought for a long time that British intelligence services, especially MI5 and MI6, were keeping a close eye on Diana in her last years, especially since she was dating the famous Egyptian businessman Dodi Fayed. There were reports that Diana's engagement to a non-British and non-Christian partner worried the establishment. These worries could have had political effects, especially since Britain's relationships with the Middle East after its colonization are still tense. The part of British intelligence was hotly debated during the inquest into Diana's death, but it was officially ruled out. Based on what Princess Anne recently said, It seems like these investigations either didn't go deep enough or purposely hid important information. If MI5 or MI6 were involved, it means that Diana's moves, conversations, and probably even her last hours were being watched. This makes it more likely that the Paris car accident could have been avoided, or even planned ahead of time by people who were watching her. One name that comes up is Henry Paul, and he was the driver of the car that crashed in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. According to the official report, Paul was drunk, and that the accident happened because he was going too fast and couldn't make good decisions. But there have been doubts about this theory for a long time. People knew that Paul had ties to French intelligence services, and there were reports that he might have been an agent. If he really did what he was told or was part of a bigger plan, his part in Diana's death becomes more important. Was Henry Paul just a pawn that was used to put him in a position where he unintentionally contributed to the crash, or was he more directly involved and knew that something bad could happen? The fact that foreign players might be involved adds another level of difficulty. Diana was a world icon by the time she died, not just a British queen. People both liked and disliked her for her charity work, especially her fight to ban landmines. This effort directly went against the financial goals of companies that make weapons and governments that depend on them. There are rumors that Diana's death may have had something to do with her work as an activist. It's possible that big businesses and the military wanted to silence her because they saw her as a threat to their successful operations. Diana's impact as a humanitarian after she died has only grown, and her legacy continues to fuel peace and justice movements around the world. Now, the big question is whether Diana's support could have caused such a strong reaction that she was killed. If Princess Anne's words imply that Diana was kept quiet because she was becoming more independent and influential around the world, then this has far-reaching effects beyond royal politics. It makes me think that her death might have been part of a bigger, planned plot involving a group of people whose goals overlapped with those of the British establishment. The truth that Anne told about Diana also casts a long cloud over her relationships, especially with Prince Charles and the rest of the royal family. In the years before she died, there was a lot of distance between them. The media frenzy that followed Diana's split from Charles in 1996 was one of the worst times in modern royal history. The news of Charles's affair with Camilla Parker Bowles and Diana's own relationships caused a public and private split in the royal family. This was a terrible thing for an organization that takes pride in being united. Diana changed into a less stable person after her split. She talked about her mental health problems, how lonely she felt, and how unhappy she was in her marriage in a way that had never been done before in royal tradition. The monarchy lives on the idea that its members are tough and don't show their feelings. Diana's public weakness put that carefully crafted image at risk, and some people in the organization may have thought she went too far by talking about the family's problems. Though Anne's words were not direct, they give the impression that Diana's decision to leave royal life may have played a part in her sad death. The royal system was very afraid that Diana had gone from being a normal ex-royal to something that could not be controlled or predicted. People might have thought she was risky for an institution that puts stability and control above all else because she was honest, had a strong connection with the people, and didn't follow royal rules. From what Anne said, it sounds like these feelings were deeply ingrained. People have said that the royal family puts the survival of the throne ahead of the health and happiness of each individual member. In Diana's case, this internal fight between upholding the institution's honor and meeting the needs and wants of a well-known person could have led to a dark and terrible choice. Diana's fame around the world made things even more difficult. People loved her and saw her as a symbol of kindness and care. But within the royal family, her huge popularity may have been seen as a problem. Her ability to cast a shadow over other royals, like the Queen and Prince Charles, and her role as a different source of power could have been disturbing. A lot of people liked Diana, which directly challenged the monarchy's traditional power structures and its story of royal authority. The things Princess Anne said suggest that the choice to remove Diana may have been based on a belief that the monarchy needed to be more balanced and under control. Some people might think it's impossible for the royal family to work together against a member of their own family, but history is full of examples of royal scheming, backstabbing, and political maneuvering. While it's still just a guess, the idea that these actions could have included planning Diana's death fits with how power fights have happened in royal families in the past. Without a doubt, Princess Anne's admission makes us question the royal family's goals and their determination to protect the institution at all costs. Diana's effect on her boys, especially on Prince William as heir to the throne, would have been a big part of these calculations. The conservative ideas of the monarchy might have been challenged by her ideals and way of life, which stressed kindness, openness, and breaking with royal tradition. In the event that Diana's death was planned, it would show how cruel the royal family is, ready to kill one of its most beloved members to protect the institution. This kind of behavior would show how far the government might go to keep things under control and stable, even if it means hurting family ties and public love. The situation paints a picture of a monarchy that cares about both how it looks and how its future might be changed. It's possible that Diana's role as a mother and her power over her boys, especially William, were seen as a direct threat to the norms and the established order. Diana's push for modernization and the royal family's adherence to traditional values could have led to a serious internal conflict that required extreme steps. In the event that Princess Anne's words are representative of a deeper truth, they paint a bleak picture of an institution ready to do anything to stay alive, even if it means planning the death of a family member. This new information would not only change how we think about the monarchy's past, but it would also make us question its moral and ethical roots. The future of the monarchy is looking pretty rocky right now. People's trust in the royal family has already been on the edge with recent scandals like Prince Andrew's troubles, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepping away, and all the questions about how the royals handle their money and perks. Now, with Princess Anne's bombshell about Diana's death, there's a real chance that people's disappointment with the monarchy could get even worse. This might push more people to demand changes or even start questioning if the monarchy should stick around at all. If folks start believing that the royals are capable of such serious misdeeds, it could really shake things up and make it hard for the monarchy to stay as it is.
What if Princess Diana could have been saved if she got to the hospital faster? When the terrible news of Princess Diana's death came out on August 30th, 1997, the whole was in shock. The doctor who tried to save Diana's life has finally spoken out after years of silence, and what he said shocked everyone. As news came in from the Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital, all eyes were on the medical staff, which was led by surgeon Dr. Monsef Darman. Many people came up with crazy ideas about what happened, and soon the doctors who had worked so hard to save her were unfairly blamed. The question, could they have done more, has been asked for years. Before we get into what he said about that terrible night, let's go back and remember how it all started. Diana and her friend Dodi Al-Fayed were on a boat in the beautiful French and Italian Riviera on what seemed like a normal summer day. No one could have thought that what began as a quiet vacation would quickly turn into something terrible. The private jet that Princess Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed were on landed at Paris's Le Bourget Airport on August 30th, 1997. They were only in the City of Lights for a short time before moving on to London. Their plan? Spent the night at the fancy Hotel Ritz Paris, which was owned by Dodi's dad, Mohammed Al-Fayed. This place was not only fancy, but it was also close to Mohammed's flat, making it easy to get away from the constant paparazzi. The hotel staff came up with a plan to get around the persistent photographers. They would send out a fake car from the Ritz's main door to hide the real one. Diana and Dodi would sneak out of the house through a back door in the meantime. At 12:20 a.m., they got into a black 1994 Mercedes-Benz S280 in secret, hoping for a smooth, quiet ride. But they didn't know that things would soon go badly on this car ride. They set out with Trevor Rees-Jones in the front and Henry Paul, who is the deputy head of security at the Ritz, behind the wheel. One small thing that would later turn out to be very important was that none of them were wearing seatbelts. The plan was easy: stay out of the way of the cameras and don't make a fuss. The tour went by the lovely Place de la Concorde and along the Seine River. It was very quiet at night, but all of a sudden, things changed. At 12:23 a.m., just 3 minutes later, as they went into the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, something terrible happened. Then, though, something strange happened. Henry Paul lost control of the car and swerved all over the place to avoid a strange white Fiat. The Mercedes turned quickly and hit the 13th pillar of the tunnel head-on at 65 mph, which is over twice the speed limit and very dangerous. It had a terrible effect. Lost control of the car, it hit the stone wall of the tunnel and came to a terrible stop. The front of the car was a mess, and the fact that there were no guardrails made things even worse. This led to chaos. Early witnesses said they saw strange scenes of smoke rising from the wrecks. The paparazzi who were following them quickly arrived at the scene before emergency services could even arrive. What to do in an emergency? Princess Diana miraculously lived through the first crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, which set off a mad dash to save her life. The next few seconds were a mix of chaos and order as everyone there started to understand how bad things were. In the dark tunnel, among the wreckage of the black Mercedes, an unlikely hero stepped up. Dr. Frédéric Mallier, a doctor who wasn't on duty but was passing by. He was the first person to offer Diana help. Even though she didn't seem hurt, she was in shock and barely aware. She kept saying, "Oh my God," and begged, "Leave me alone," in a soft voice. The scene looked like it was from a movie. There were flashing lights from both cameras and emergency cars, and it was a quiet night in Paris. People often think of the paparazzi as bad because they are always trying to get the perfect shot. At the scene, they responded in different ways. Some people, being more caring, rushed in to help and tried to open the bent car doors. But some people, who were caught up in the chaos, kept taking pictures, which later made shocked onlookers angry and even led to some physical fights. After the crash, police and firefighters came around 12:30 a.m. amidst all the chaos. The cops started setting up the scene right away, and soon after, an ambulance arrived. Things were tense inside the ambulance. Diana was put to sleep after a short period of anxiety, during which she tried to take out her IV. While they were moving her, she suddenly went into cardiac arrest. The medical staff worked very hard and were able to start her heart beating again with CPR. Diana was finally freed from the wreckage at 1:18 a.m. The ambulance left for the Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital at 1:41 a.m. and arrived at 2:06 a.m. When they got to the hospital, the medical staff had a huge problem. Diana had serious internal injuries, like a heart that was out of place, and her chest and arm were badly hurt. It was a tough fight, even for the most skilled doctors. Even though they did everything they could, like massaging Diana's heart, her situation got worse. Sadly, she died at 4 a.m. after a fight to save her that was full of false hopes and devastating defeats. At 6 a.m., there was a news gathering where her death was announced. It was a heartbreaking event that shocked people all over the world. Everyone was sad about the death of such a well-liked person. Late that same day, both the French Prime Minister and the Interior Minister paid their respects at the hospital. Soon after, Prince Charles and Diana's sisters arrived in Paris, starting a time of sadness around the world for a famous person. When they went to the hospital with President Jacques Chirac, They were both very sad and thankful for the doctors who worked so hard to save Diana. Her body was brought back to the UK in a very sad way, with all the respect and sadness it earned. The Royal Standard was used to carefully move her body from RAF Northolt to the Hammersmith and Fulham morgue. But that crash did more than just kill someone. It led to a lot of questions and probes. That will be a big deal to talk about later. French police looked for every sign, like a strange white Fiat Uno that was seen in the crash, but they could never figure out who drove it. French investigators finally found that the driver, Henry Paul, was mostly to blame for the accident because he was going too fast and was drunk. His drug and alcohol levels were checked, which led to more rumors about his state that night. Some people, like Robin Cook, the British Foreign Secretary, and Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, said that the tragedy was caused by the cameras. This brought attention to the bigger problem of privacy invasions and media intrusions. Even so, none of the shooters were charged, even though they were accused. You may be wondering how the royal family dealt with everything after Diana's death. A lot of people didn't like what they saw because the whole world was watching. People thought the royal family's answer was a bit stiff, even cold. At Balmoral, Queen Elizabeth II was with Prince Philip and her grandsons, William and Harry. She chose to keep the boys out of the public eye. Some saw this as a grandma protecting her grieving grandchildren, but many people thought the royals were being rude by not recognizing the country's sadness. It was hard for them to balance what the people wanted with their own pain, and not everyone was happy with how they did it. Charles, Diana's ex-husband, had to tell their boys, who were only 15 and 12 years old at the time, the terrible news. Charles took on his role as both guardian and comforter for his boys, even though royal duties usually come first. He did this to show that beneath the titles, they were just a family dealing with a painful loss. As word got out that Diana had died, people who were sad left a lot of flowers and other memories outside of Kensington Palace. But while everyone else was sad, the royal family's silence was shocking. It wasn't until 5 days later that the Queen came back to London from Balmoral and gave a live speech to the whole country. In her words, she admitted how sad she was and called Diana a remarkable person. She said that she admired Diana's drive and desire to help others, and she hoped that everyone could respect her life, even though it was cut short. Someone brought up the idea of Diana's funeral being open to the public. Diana had won the hearts of the country as the people's princess, but she wasn't close to the royal family. At the end of the day, a public event was chosen to show how important she was to many people. The royal family held a grand service for her at Westminster Abbey on September 6, 1997. A lot of people were very sad. A lot of famous people, like US First Lady Hillary Clinton and Elton John, played a touching new version of Candle in the Wind that was written in Diana's honor. The cheers that broke out after Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, gave a touching and sometimes sharp tribute were one of the most memorable parts of the day. He spoke badly about the press and the royal family for how they had treated Diana in a sneaky way. This change from the usual seriousness of royal funerals brought out how difficult Diana's relationship was with the group she used to be a part of. After the service, Diana was buried in a private ceremony at Althorpe, the home of her family. Her final resting place, which was on an island in the estate's lovely pleasure garden, seemed to represent both her separation from the royal family and her link to her family history, the theories of conspiracy. Of course, the sad death of Princess Diana led to a lot of conspiracy theories. People put together different parts of the story to make a web of suspicion and mystery. Numerous of these ideas are based on Mohammed Al-Fayed, who was Diana's father and died with her. His belief that the two were killed on purpose by the British elite has not changed. Mohammed has long said that important people in Britain couldn't stand the thought of Diana marrying his son, who was an Egyptian Muslim. This sounds like something out of a thriller. He said that this connection was seen as a threat to the purity of the monarchy, and that those in power planned for them to be killed because of it. Mohammed's claims have kept the theory fires going, making sure that people are still arguing passionately about what happened that terrible night. There are even people who blame the medical staff who tried to save Diana, which makes the fire even hotter. They give a dramatic account of what happened, saying that Diana wasn't killed in the crash, but was killed on purpose at the hospital. These ideas usually center on the claimed delays in getting her to the hospital and the medical procedures she underwent, saying that they were all part of a sinister British plan to kill her. Dr. Monsef Darman, who led the team at Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital that fought to save her life, is the most important person in this idea. Some people who believe in conspiracies think that Diana's late arrival at the hospital wasn't just a mistake, but part of a planned attack. They said that the delay was meant to make her situation worse, and don't honor the hard work and commitment of the medical staff. The investigation into Operation Paget. There were a lot of rumors and crazy ideas that led to Operation Paget, a huge investigation by the British Metropolitan Police led by Lord John Stevens. It began in 2004 with the goal of figuring out how Princess Diana died and putting an end to all the many conspiracy theories. No stone was left unturned during Operation Paget. The team had two main objectives. First, to learn as much as possible about the crash, and second, to look closely at Diana's medical care. A lot of the ideas said that the crash wasn't just a bad accident, but something that was planned ahead of time to be bad. Many people pointed the finger at the royal family and the British Secret Services. Some said MI6 planned Diana's death with direct orders from the royal family. Mohammed Al-Fayed, who was the father of Dodi Fayed and also tragically died in the crash, gave this whole conspiracy idea a lot of support. According to Mohammed, there was definitely foul play going on. His public accusations and legal battles kept these ideas alive in the media, which led to an official reaction. That answer came in the form of Operation Paget, which looked everywhere. As part of their study, the team talked to important witnesses, experts in different fields, and went over every detail of Diana's care that night. They hired top forensic experts, like doctors and accident investigators, to look over all the evidence and figure out what went so horribly wrong. The cameras were something that the team really paid attention to. Many people thought that the fact that they kept chasing Diana's car was a big reason why the accident happened. Because of this, the probe looked into how the constant pressure from the media on Diana might have led to the crash. A lot of attention was also paid to the medical care Diana got right after the crash. Some people who believe in conspiracy said that her care was delayed on purpose, but Operation Paget found no proof of this. It turned out that the French emergency team was just doing what they always do. They stabilized Diana at the scene of the crime. This is called stay and play, before rushing her to the hospital. This plan was meant to give her the best chance of living, even though she was badly hurt. After 3 years of research, the team finally put together a huge 832-page study that explained everything they had found. What did they come to? When looked at more closely, the conspiracy ideas just didn't make sense. To make things clear, a big study said the crash was an awful accident, not part of a secret plan. It put all the blame on Henri Paul, the driver, who was drunk, and the reporters who were following Diana's car. In 2008, a coroner's inquest agreed with this and said that Diana and Dodi's deaths were unlawful killing because the driver was drunk and the reporters were too aggressive. Diana wasn't wearing a seatbelt, which made her injuries worse, the inquiry also said. Let us now talk about Dr. Moncef, the doctor who worked so hard to save Princess Diana. We talked about him before when we were talking about conspiracy ideas. Then he finally spoke out, telling the Daily Mail his side of the story. He said that the night at the emergency room started out like any other until something very strange happened. She was badly hurt in the car accident and was rushed in around 2 a.m. Right away, Dr. Moncef and his team knew they were facing a big problem. Diana had already had a heart attack, and the rescuers were working hard to get her stable before taking her to the hospital. The doctors got right to work as soon as Princess Diana arrived at the hospital. A lot of x-rays were taken, and the readings were not good. Diana's left pulmonary vein was torn badly, and she was bleeding inside. This is a tough and dangerous injury. Dr. Moncef knew how bad it was, so he chose to do a thoracotomy, which means he opened up her chest to try to fix the problem. He found a tear in the pericardium, the sac that protects the heart, during this high-pressure surgery. This was an even bigger problem. Her chest was filled with blood because of the tear. This put a lot of stress on her heart and made it hard for it to pump properly. Because he knew the case was too complicated to handle by himself, Dr. Moncef called for help. Professor Alain Pavy, a famous French heart surgeon, arrived at the scene around 2:30 a.m. He took over and moved Diana to a different operating room for more complicated surgery. This gave everyone a spark of hope. Dr. Moncef, his team, and Professor Pavy did everything they could, but Diana's injuries were just too bad. The events of that night changed Dr. Moncef in a way that he didn't talk about for over 20 years. Dr. Moncef Daman recently broke his silence and told new things about the crazy night Princess Diana died. There are reports that Prince Charles could be arrested in connection with Diana's death, which adds another twist to the story. It would be big news in the UK and around the world if these stories turned out to be true. People have been saying for a while that Prince Charles might have had a reason to be a part of a plan against Diana. He may have wanted to marry Camilla Parker Bowles, and Diana was seen as getting in the way of that. There have been rumors that Charles may have removed Diana to make room for his romance with Camilla. Going back to what Dr. Moncef Daman recently said, he gave an amazing account of what happened that night. Diana was in very bad shape when she was rushed into the operating room because she was bleeding very badly inside. The well-known Professor Allen was part of Dr. Moncef's team, and they acted quickly to find the source of the... A big tear was quickly found in Diana's upper left pulmonary vein, which is a very important blood vessel. This kind of injury was very bad, and it made the operations harder. Professor Allen led the way and worked carefully to fix the torn vein. Dr. Moncef said that the operation room was tense and focused, and that everyone there knew how important every second was. Diana's torn vein had to be fixed right away if she was going to be saved. Even though they used the best methods and were very exact, the situation was very tough. Diana's heart had stopped, mostly because she had been hurt so badly and lost so much blood. Now that the line was fixed, the doctors had to do something even harder: bring Diana back to life. Dr. Moncef Daman talked about the hard work that came next. The team did every possible thing to get her heart beating again, such as manual cardiac massage, where they pumped the heart by hand, and multiple defibrillation tries, which usually worked but didn't this time. For an hour, the room was filled with doctors' determined faces, pressing orders, and the beeping of monitors. Dr. Moncef gave Diana a lot of different medicines to try to get her heart beating again and keep her situation stable. It became clear that their work might not be enough as time went on. At 4:06 a.m., when all other options had been exhausted, the team made the heartbreaking choice to stop trying to save the life. Dr. Moncef and his co-workers were very sad when they learned that Princess Diana had died. No matter how they felt, the moment was a crushing loss for everyone who had given their all to save a woman who was loved by many people around the world. After a night that was both public and deeply personal, the team had to deal with the fallout. They were upset and overwhelmed, knowing that they had fought not only for a patient, but for a worldwide figure, made Dr. Moncef think about how deeply the event had affected them emotionally. That operating room and the whole world were changed by Princess Diana's death in a big way. When Dr. Moncef thought about that terrible night, he felt a deep sense of duty and was very aware that their work was being watched around the world. He was sure they did everything they could to save her, even though the end result was terrible. So what do you think about Dr. Moncef's point of view?